Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first edition of Play-by-Play with Eddie and Jay. This week's theme is first matches. What's the first match that you remember seeing?
Now, this was hard because, I mean, there's a lot that I remember specifically in the later years of the Inner Your House pay-per-views. Buried Alive was one. That was a good one. But the very first was WrestleMania 8 at the Hoosier Dome. And it was Jake Roberts and Undertaker. That was a very specific first match I remember seeing. Obviously, it stuck out because at the time, I was both terrified of The Undertaker, but I was completely fascinated with him.
Yeah.
To get Jake Roberts in there with a character like The Undertaker seemed very fitting because Jake was a very there's something about him that made him very enigmatic, and just the way he'd cut promos and his inflection and bringing the snake to the ring, which was just equally as terrifying. But even the promos, and I remember having an old VHS cassette tape of the promo in the funeral parlor bit when he gets his hand locked in the casket, and just... Again, probably not the greatest match, probably not my favorite match, but in terms of first goes, this one definitely made an impression. So, obviously, we could get right into it, I suppose.
Take your ringside. Look at that crowd. When's the last time? They haven't been there since.
Didn't they have... They went back, I want to say, WrestleMania 18.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Is that the same building? It must be.
I want to say it was. I remember specifically. I think it was when Rock and Stone Cold, when Stone Cold went heel.
Okay.
When he aligned himself with Vince, I want to say this was the same arena. I could be totally off on that.
Yeah,
my memory's not very good. Now, the funny thing about my picking this match was it was not an intentional thing to tie in with our conversation about DDP and Jake the Snake. But the thing about going back and watching this match, and first off, Mark Calloway. At 47, I mean, he's starting to look his age, and there's nothing wrong with that, but seeing a younger Undertaker still blows my mind. And I'm really hoping, I mentioned this to you in an earlier conversation this week, that Paul Bearer has hinted that a lot of the fans want to see this version of The Undertaker back. They want to see the gray and the purple tie with the gloves and the boots. And
it's timeless. I don't know.
I feel like that's the Undertaker that's going to retire at WrestleMania. That's almost why I'm not heartbroken if he doesn't come back to work this year's big pay-per-view.
Maybe some kind of hybrid take on it.
Oh, absolutely. Well,
modernize it a little bit, but still a throwback to how it was before.
Well, it's interesting because everyone obviously has their favorite Undertaker. Yeah. I mean, I feel like this one's pretty universal. This is the Undertaker that we all remember growing up. I mean, most of us, before we got into the Attitude Era, had at least been fans or had a vague recollection of the Hulk Hogans, the Ultimate Warriors, Sergeant Slaughters, and what have you. But more so the Undertaker, because it's a goofy character, but it was a goofy character that they found the right guy to portray that character. They sold it as best as they could, and it didn't come off as too cartoony. There's a reason why Undertaker, even at 47, still makes appearances. That character will stand the test of time. Now, going back to Jake Roberts, though, this is the Jake Roberts I remember. This is the Jake Roberts that makes him moving in with DDP such a big deal to me, because this is the Jake Roberts that you want to see go into the Hall of Fame.
Yep. Definitely. I mean, it's kind of weird. This is kind of the falling off point for Jake, really. If you go back and think about it, he never really had another major WrestleMania. Did he even have a WrestleMania appearance after this?
You know, that's an interesting thought.
He did the six-man at 12, and
I kind of feel like once you get into bigger tag matches, though, and you're not a part of a singles competition, that's when you know the falling off is happening. And I know with him, obviously, Jake Roberts came back, and he was a huge catalyst for Steve Austin at King of the Ring in '96, but I feel like '96 was a strange year, too, because that was also the year, that was the same pay-per-view even that Ultimate Warrior had made his return. And Warrior, actually, he did a run-in at this Mania, and he wasn't as...
Or did he? Because that looks like the fake Warrior.
You know, that has been one of the
spandex suit.
The best urban legends in years. And I even heard it about The Undertaker. I remember getting in arguments with friends of mine about... Obviously, they had the Undertaker versus the Underfaker, but there was stuff where people would tell me, like, oh, Ultimate Warrior really died in a car crash. That's not the real Ultimate Warrior. And same with Undertaker. I had a guy say, that's not Undertaker. Undertaker doesn't look like... Well, obviously, because he grew up. Like, he got older. Yeah. He grew more into his face. Like, he's got a little bit of the, you know... He's younger, Lloyd. He's got that youth to him. Obviously, here, again, Undertaker, he's selling it the best that a guy his size can. obviously in later years when he got leaner, and maybe this is the case that they make for this being the original Undertaker, and it's not the same guy, but
I mean, look at the face. Of course it's the same guy, but
well, that was no different than when Kane returned.
yeah.
And everybody, well, that's really Mark Calloway. It's Kane. I
They're
know.
in the ring together. It's Kane.
Now, Paul Bearer was even by far one of the, and that's the thing that I want to note about watching a match like this and going back is the significance of Paul Bearer as one of the best managers in pro wrestling.
Definitely.
And I mean, that's even a goofier gimmick for a guy.
The pale face.
But it's theatrical. It's all about the pageantry.
Definitely.
And again,
it wouldn't work today, but
I definitely wouldn't work today. I mean, think of the Boogeyman when they came out. If that character had come out during this era, it would have worked. It would have had a shelf life, a very short shelf life, but it would have worked. When the Boogeyman came out in the 2000s, that was not a happening character. That character was not. I mean, you even had your Gangrel ripoff in the new ECW, but I mean, that's what fascinates the hell out of me about. Because again, Mark Calloway, very talented guy, very athletic, big guy. Not one of the greatest pro wrestlers, but definitely one of the better characters. And the problem with getting behind a character, as I mentioned on the show earlier about Goldust and The Godfather and say Gangrel, they were just characters. They didn't have a shelf life. They obviously weren't going to be going 20-0 at a WrestleMania. They were going to drop off eventually, despite the fact that Goldust did make an impressive run-in at the Rumble.
yeah,
But
that was cool. That was nice. I like when they mix it up like that.
But sometimes you got to figure if it's just for the nostalgia factor or if they really have staying power. Undertaker was a wrestler that I feel like nobody ever got nostalgic about. And he kind of was the Madonna of pro wrestling because he always reinvented himself, even though he was consistently the same character. Just the look, it matured, it evolved, and it got more refined over the years. Again, one of my favorite versions of Undertaker was Ministry Undertaker. You know, with the beard and the comparisons to Satan. And it worked because it was the zeitgeist.
Yeah. It's the small changes, whether it be boots, tassels, or whatever.
Absolutely.
It's just the overall package. That's what works.
Now, watching this match, though, I mean, it's going to be hard because we grew up in the 90s. We grew up with so many different versions of Undertaker, be it, the Ministry of Darkness Undertaker, the American Badass, Big Evil, what have you. But I don't know. Could you ever just look at a guy in this match and say 20-0 WrestleMania undefeated streak?
No. I mean, that's the thing. It just evolved to become the 20-0 thing. But I don't know. Like, he's very, even here, he's very, I don't know, stiff and.
It's a shame because this is not one of the better Undertaker matches. And again, this was more of a first match I can recall in terms of the spectacle that was wrestling, in terms of the different characters, the tights, the look of the ring, the size of the crowd, the capacity of the crowd, what have you. Just the whole event leading in. And again, this was the same WrestleMania where I believe it was Ric Flair and Macho Man. Yep. And then you had, and it wasn't Sid Vicious, it was Sid Justice and Hogan.
With the alleged rumor that, did you ever hear this one, that Sid shit himself during the main event? That's one of those urban legends where you never find out.
I would not be the least bit surprised, though, because I remember watching an interview where Randy Orton, actually no, it was a radio interview that I listened to, where Randy Orton admitted that John Cena had shit his pants during one of the matches, because he was fighting the flu or something, and he legitimately shit his pants during the match and kept wrestling.
Now, I'm not sure if it was that Sid match or the actual WrestleMania 13 one. It's one of the Sid Mania matches. There's only two Sid Mania matches.
It's funny too because again, that was a great moment for the Undertaker winning the title at that pay-per-view, but that was one of the crappiest opponents he's probably ever had. That was
a clusterfuck. That's probably the worst WrestleMania. Like we'll have to do a topic of worst.
Oh, absolutely. Well, going into it because I could just go on and on because personally I think the worst WrestleMania was Bam Bam Bigelow, and I'm spacing on the football player's name, but that is the main event, and then you had Diesel and Michaels, and I believe that was also with Taker and Jimmy Snuka.
The company was bare-boned at that time too, so but I understand. But 13 to me, you had the thing, if you go back and watch the Michaels and Bret Hart DVD, they talk about having the possible WrestleMania 12 rematch, and it's like that's of course what they were going for, and then Michaels did what he did, whether he actually had the back injury at the time or lost his smile, whatever. But
well, the nice thing that came out of that though was the Austin Bret Hart match.
yeah,
which
that made it. I mean,
that was
the main event.
That was really to me. Oh, that's the crappiest tombstone. I was just discussing it before we started watching it, and I almost missed it. That's how bad that tombstone was. This is when you want American Badass Undertaker. I would much rather see the Last Ride. God bless Jake for selling the hell out of that, because you can. This is worse than. I remember seeing St. Valentine's Day Massacre when I was a kid. My cousin rented the tape. And you had Ryan, it was Ken Shamrock arguing with his sister Ryan Shamrock, and I'm putting that in quotations because obviously she was a real sister. Oh, and the match is already over, see that? But Ken Shamrock, she goes to slap him, and she forgets her cue, and you hear him say, "Slap me." That's right up there with Sideways Blue Mat Tombstone.
Nice.
And Taker looked totally shocked. Oh, I'm supposed to do something right now. I got you, Paul. I am really hoping, though, as much as I could bag on this match, these are 3 guys in that ring that I would love to see in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
If Taker goes, though, my big question is does he just go in just him and Paul, or do you induct him, Paul, and Kane?
You have to break out. You can't put Taker and Paul Bearer in at the same time. Taker's had so much more of a career than the package group here, so... Paul Bearer definitely deserves to go in, but not...
I think it would be interesting if they were on the same bill or if they got inducted together, but personally, that's the future Hall of Famer right there, and he doesn't even know it. With the tombstone like that, I don't think I would either, so...
All right, that does it for Undertaker versus Jake, WrestleMania 8. Stay tuned later on. We're going to have my first match that I can recall. So, I'm Jason Smith.
I'm Eddie Brophy, so you don't have to be.
Thanks for watching.